welcome, and all aboard for episode 7 of The Last Caboose. Here we are sitting at the end of steel at Exshaw Siding. Now we're going to make our push to the west today. We're going to be moving on through the Bow Valley and up around Canmore and up into Banff. Now Banff at the time is Siding 29. Now just a note on the history and the realism of this map. A lot of these towns didn't exist until the CPR came. The CPR was kind of nation building and town building. As they moved west, towns were settled. Allotments and town plots were planned out by the CPR, and only a few towns in the Bow Valley existed, Calgary being one of them, and Canmore being another one. So all of the towns like Banff, Siding 29, didn't exist. There was no pre-existing settlement there. So our push to Banff is more gamey than real, but yeah. I've gone ahead and made some changes. If we look at the end of steel here, we've got a new set of tracks. It's the more American tracks. I think that they are more fitting. The CPR was built by mostly American contractors. They were more versed in constructing railroads in the late 1800s than the Canadians were. They were more well equipped to handle it, and they had better bankrolls behind them. Now the entire CPR was funded either by the Canadian government or in a joint effort between the Canadian government and banks in England, but a lot of the contracts went to American contractors. So I thought American tracks would be more suited, and it is what plays. If we look back along this, the end of steel here, we're going to be extending west, but I've got the game paused right now, and if we bring up the UI, I'd just like to take you through some changes that I've made, and we're going to make a few changes. First and foremost, Exshaw Siding. Exshaw is a town that didn't exist until the mid-1950s, I believe. Or maybe it was the 1930s. I will get back to you on that. But its original siding here was actually called The Gap. So we will rename it appropriately. And The Gap was chosen as a name simply because it was, if we can look at it, the chink in the Canadian Rockies armor. If you look here, it is the one place in this whole region. This is actually a lake, so we have to do some assets, but it is the one place that we can enter the mountains and continue westwards. You can see it is actually the only viable route on our map, and this being a realistic height data map, this is the way the world looks. So it was aptly named The Gap. Now, a few other changes I've made is if we go over to the town of Canmore, it used to be further over to the west of the valley, and I've moved it over just to get it out of the way of the future river that we're going to be placing in here. Again, I'm going to be placing all those river assets off camera. They are so tedious to place. That is not a slight on the mod maker. In fact, fantastic job on the water mod, but it is difficult and time consuming and does not make for very interesting YouTube. So we're just got the town out of the way. Hopefully it will grow in and encompass over to the western side of the valley, but we'll just have to see how that plays out, and when it does, we're going to have to add bridges to not interfere with our water assets. I've also removed the coal mine here because it was in the way of where the river is going to flow here, and I relocated that coal mine further up into the Ypres area of our map here on the Ghost River. There is no real coal development there, but we need to play the game. I added the iron mine here. I removed it from the entrance of the Kananaskis Valley as it was kind of gamey and I didn't like it nearly as much, so I thought I'd add it right out here in the Bragg Creek area. This is by Rainy Pass, and the headwaters of the Elbow River. So we've got the Little Elbow and the Big Elbow going around here, and they go up and into Elbow Lake, which is right about here, and Elbow Pass, which would take you over and into the Kananaskis Valley. So we've decided to put an iron mine right there on Rainy Summit. And I believe that's about all the changes. I just did a little bit of painting down here. I am going to start to add more wheat fields and other things. There's not much corn, so I think we're going to stick with pretty much wheat. That's about the only thing that would grow here. Now, it's interesting, Sir Stamford Fleming crossed the country in 1873 and to assess the viable routes for a railroad. And when he came across the country, he went to the north to Edmonton, which is lower down in elevation than Calgary. And pretty much his broad estimate of all of the Alberta prairies was it was kind of unarable land and wasn't very nice. And which is interesting because another gentleman came by just afterwards and said, absolutely not. No, this is perfectly good land, great for farming. But what they didn't know is that the Alberta prairies at the time was going through one of the wettest periods that it ever has had in history. And so it did look very good. And it turned out that Sir Stamford Fleming was right. And the climate here is extremely dry and not very conducive to crops. But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they developed a new strain of wheat, which matured quicker, and you could get it off the fields quicker before the winter snows came in at the middle to the end of September. So that actually ended up helping out this area and helping out all the farmers here settle the land and make it profitable for them. So I think, why don't we play the game? You got to get the not the time playing. We will get the date unpaused here shortly. Once we make it into Banff, I think we can definitely do that. But I did play the game a little bit while I was making some changes in sandbox mode, and I did allow the money to run up a little bit because we're going to need quite a bit of money to make our push west. Now I think we'll start moving right there. We want yard tracks? No, standard tracks. I believe they're standard tracks. Yes, they are. Interesting. I've not seen these. Oh, yard tracks. They look much like high-speed tracks, but here we go. We'll get some standard tracks in, and we're going to just turn on our contour map here, just because we want to avoid the big stuff like that edge of the mountain. And what would be really nice is if we could get this flat and pushed in so we don't make too much of an embankment. We will have to make some though, and I believe that's good. And what we're going to do is we're just going to come around, we're going to hug the side of this mountain as best we can without making too much of a ugly mess of the mountain here. So let's just go back here a little bit. No matter what we do, we're gonna cut into that mountain a little bit, and I think some terraforming will take care of that. So I think we'll just kind of straighten out, and we will end up having to come down into the valley here a little more. But what we want to do is we want to come up. We're going to hug alongside here, and then what happens is we're going to make a sharp turn to get in and over onto Main Street here in Canmore. And I did end up deleting all these buildings on the side of Main Street to make it easier for myself. But it looks like the AI has had other plans with me, so c'est la vie. We will have to end up deleting all the buildings on this side of Canmore. So what I think we're going to do is just pause it quickly here. Still got 12 million in the bank. This is going to cost an arm and a leg, but needs must. What we want to do is we're going to want to get now, as I said, Canmore did exist, so we're going to get a train station in as soon as possible here. And let's flip it around. We're making it fairly long because, interestingly enough, the way the mileposts, the way the CPR was constructed was a single track main line from east to west. And being single track, you needed sidings, and sidings on the prairies were spaced about every 6 to 10 miles. And that was for a very deliberate reason, being that people in that day obviously didn't have access to internal combustion engine cars and the like, so a cart journey of about 20 miles is about as far as people could travel in one day. And so you would want to place your sidings that it would make a half day's travel between each siding from the furthest point, to make it accessible for the farmers to go in and come back to pick up supplies, their loved ones, what have you. So as the railroad moved west, they placed these sidings, and Calgary ended up not being part of one of those sidings, but Calgary, being a fort already, definitely got a passenger station, definitely got a freight station, and all of these things, but it wasn't actually a divisional or an approved or a mandatory siding point. And then they placed divisional cities along the line, where they would have roundhouses, turnaround points for the trains, and Canmore ended up, just by matter of chance, by being a pre-approved settlement, and at the beginning of the Rockies, where locomotives needed to be serviced, uncoupled, double-headed at some points, happened to be the perfect place for it. So Canmore was a divisional city, which means it got the roundhouse, it got a yard, and all of these things for rolling stock. So Canmore was fully developed, or not fully developed, but quite a bit more developed, especially the early part of the railroad, than Calgary was. So that is just some interesting notes, but let's just place that in. And now we're going to send our track along straight. Now it's going to make a really sharp corner here and head up. Let's see just what the game does here, just to match these two pieces of track. There we go. 70. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I think here we go. Now we're going to make our push towards Banff. Siding 29. And wouldn't it be lovely to get that finally in, push the end of steel to where our objective is, and then we get to just optimize and play our line. So here we are. We're just gonna keep this flat as possible and try and stay off this this ridge line as much as possible. Maybe we'll play it a little bit flatter, make a little bit of a cutting. We're basically trying to stay right below this ridge and leave a little bit of room for maybe possibly a future highway. And here we go. We're going to come up here. Now this is where it gets a little bit wonky, because I can't see the forest for the trees here. But here, the railroad actually departs from the river. Instead of following it meticulously like it has, it starts to head up and around. Now this is an interesting another interesting story. Part of the railroad's history here is, if we take our contour lines off, in the 1870s, late 1870s, a man by the name of William Rogers came through, the man who found the pass. He was a surveyor in the United States for railroads, and he ended up surveying a good chunk of the line through the Rockies and managed to find the pass over the Selkirk Mountains from the Columbia River Valley back over to the Columbia River Valley that would shave time and money. He was also responsible for choosing the route through Kicking Horse Pass, which is the reason we're traveling up the Bow Valley right now, as it was the entrance to the Kicking Horse Pass. And when he surveyed this particular piece of track, he surveyed it straight through this little hump here. And this little hump is called Tunnel Mountain. Apparently I'm to go to bed again. And so this little hump, Tunnel Mountain, he decided that the railway should build the grade it up to the mountain, punch a tunnel through the mountain, and continue westward. He went back to Winnipeg, and a fellow surveyor and engineer looked over his work and said, I don't really agree with you. And he went out there and ended up surveying a line just around the side of Tunnel Mountain, which William Rogers actually traveled and traversed quite a few times and didn't manage to pick up. This was one of many suspect surveying calls that he made, chief among them choosing the Kicking Horse Pass. As we move into another series, we're going to actually follow the route over the Kicking Horse. We're just going to knock this back because I think instead of going up that grade, we're going to kind of traverse that grade. I want to kick it back just a little more, avoid that unnecessary turn in the track. So yeah, he made quite a few questionable choices, but because of those choices, there are several, well, not several, it is the reason Canada is the way it is in the West now. So through his surveying, he was a great surveyor, but through his surveying prowess, or ineptitude, he actually ended up putting a very, very large mark on the country of Canada. It would have been a very different country had he had more time and more thought to a lot of his surveys. So yeah, very, 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 very interesting stories from that time. So again, here at Siding 29, I think we're going to get rid of this chunk of Banff, and we are now going to place in our final, and here we are, folks, our final railway station here in Banff. Now, this is roughly the location. I would actually like it back a little bit. Actually, this road is unnecessary, so why don't we get rid of it? And as we come in straight, we could probably place it. We'll place this right here. And I don't think it needs to be nearly that long. That was for Canmore. So we could probably extend our track out just a tad. Perfect. And let's place this in here. And I'd like this just off to the side, so I think obviously let's place our track in. And let's move a little bit further west. And we're going to cross the Bow River one more time. And just for the sake of realism, we're going to place the end of steel at the end of our map. And then we can actually hit play on the date. And so we can start seeing what our new trains are going to look like. But yep, that is end of steel for now. And there we go. Here we are in Banff. Feels kind of like an underwhelming achievement at this moment, but I'm sure here once we get some more trains, on, things like that. Now, again, all of these stations are going to be modified as we start to play the game. We really just pushed west. Now, this is not a way I suggest playing the game for the ultimate gaminess of the game, if that makes any sense. But it is definitely just to add a whole bunch of realism to this. Now, here in Canmore, what I would like to do is get this station as a bypass station. So we're going to configure this. We're going to add our track on, just to avoid it being so many clicks or so many nodes created when we go in, if we wanted to delete or modify it, this piece of track. And then we're going to just add some nice straight pieces here, and there we go. And that will just turn Canmore into a Sidings. There we are. Excellent. Now we can hit play again. So we've spent quite a bit of money, but there are a couple of things that we want to definitely tap into here, and that is this coal mine and this iron mine. Now, both of these, we could game it and set up a siding here and bring both of them to one. We could just set up a siding right here. What I would like to do, just for realism, is quite possibly configure Canmore in a way where we have both cargo and passenger service in this one particular station, and bring the coal to that, and then bring our iron down the Cascade Valley around and into Banff, and pull our iron out of Banff. I think that's what we're going to do, but because we've added passenger service on here, I believe we should probably just extend our passenger line and maybe double the train up on that. So let us go find our passenger line. We'll click on Lower Cochrane, the Bow Valley line. We're going to manage the line, and so after Cochrane, we're going to go to Canmore. Oh, and it says we cannot connect those stations, and the question is why? Oh, because we probably don't have a route back in. So let's go check out Cochrane right before we make this any worse than it needs to be. And here we go. That is exactly it. So we have end of steel here. So we need to get a nice way to get onto our track here. And I think that'll do it. Perfect. And now we'll probably want to add some signals. Now I have added new signals. They're more American style, and as time goes by, more American signals. And this is what actually would have appeared on the track back in the 1800s, and as time goes on. So we've got a signal there, and then we have a long stretch with no sidings, all the way out to Kananaskis Junction. And I think that is not going to serve us well. Now, again, like I said, this track was single track, east to west, with sidings every 6 to 10 miles. For the game's purposes, that is not going to be feasible, because we are not dispatchers. We don't have timetables that we're following. We can't schedule our freight. It goes when it's full. So right now, what I'm going to do is just add a series of sidings, and we're just going to have some passing loops here that are big enough to accommodate our log trains and our freight trains. And as time goes on, we will just eventually, inevitably, double track this entire thing for profitability. Now, what's one thing I said I'd do? I said I would unpause the date, So let's get that date running. We've met our goal. The railroad reached Siding 29 in October, October of 1883, and continued westward all the way to the top of the Kicking Horse Pass, Summit City, as it was known at the time, which later became Lagan, which was a railway divisional headquarters, which is now known as Lake Louise, the wonderful, iconic Lake Louise. In our next series, we are going to be visiting that area, but from there, they overwintered in 1883 and started building the Kicking Horse Pass the next year. So we are now further east on the line, and the line development is now moved west, and is only 2 years away from completion. Although the first passenger train from the Atlantic to the Pacific was not seen until 1886, regular scheduled passenger service. So as I set up these passing loops, as you've seen, I've set up quite a few. If you really wanted to game the game, you would set up one exactly in the middle, but we don't just have 2 trains on here, so we're going to see what we can do the best we can for now. I would like to add the construction material train onto here, but really what I want to do is let's grab our line. We've got our Bow Valley. Now we're going to add Canmore to the mix, and we're going to add Banff to the mix. Now, and then we're going to come back on Canmore, and we are going to come into Lower Cochrane and back to Calgary as our head point. Excellent. Now, if we can go find our passenger train right here. No. Yeah, definitely. It's got 20 people on it. What we want to do is we're definitely going to duplicate this, but I think we're going to duplicate it and then duplicate it again. We've got quite a bit of money. Why not? Seems strange. They will space themselves out as time goes on. We are just what you would think overcrowding the line, but we are allowing the train to pass here in Canmore. The train cannot pass here in Exshaw because that is not a passing loop, and it can't pass here because it actually needs to stop in the platform, so we should add another passing point here. And like I said, ultimately we will just double track this entire thing, but for the time being we're just going to put in a whole bunch of passing loops and call it a day. There is a lot to be cleaned up on this line, but that's exactly how the CPR constructed. They had such a tight timeline and such a tight budget that they just laid track, and they laid track at a rapid pace, especially across the prairies where the building was easy. But then even when they got in and were faced with the insurmountable engineering challenge of the Canadian Rockies, they just absolutely motored along, given the terrain. It was a snail's pace in comparison to the prairies, but given the challenges, these were extremely extraordinary pieces of engineering. So here we go. This is our final passing loop. I think that will make this entire line viable for now. And what we should do is probably build a road in. So this is actually attached, and we can collect some passengers here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come straight off of there. What I'd really like to do is make a nice road straight behind the station. There we go. and then maybe put it on the curve road, make a strange intersection there, and then plop into there, get rid of the palm tree, because we all know that palms don't grow in Banff. I just really do not know, when you place these cities in, for some reason palms come as assets with the city. It is strange. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. If you could post an answer in the comments below, that'd be great. And then, like I said, I would like to get some freight on this. So I think first thing we need to see is what the catchment area of the railway station is, and it catches everything but this one residential building. So we will we'll leave that one. What's the catchment area here? Again, it's quite good. We will be adding bus routes and things like that, but probably not immediately. Now let's go and take a peek. Where are we here? We are coming across the Bow River on our move westward, and excellent. Now we need to, we're kind of at a standstill for money. We've made quite a push west, have quite a few. See, this guy, without more logs coming in, its frequency is so great now that it's really not filling up to its maximum capacity. And if we take a peek at it, let's go look at its finances. Yeah, because of that, it's really started to flag on its financial income. So we've got a lot of wasted space on that one. How about the finances on this one? This one's doing excellent, so I think we're fine there. It's just somehow we've got to get this one to be boosted up and match some sort of line rate with this logging train here. Now this logging train, which is held up waiting for our passenger train, I'm wondering if we could double it. I mean, the cost of doubling is going to be astronomical. Not replace, not modify. We're looking to clone, and apparently we just managed to clone it. I don't know how much it would have cost, but there you go. If we've cloned that, and we've been waiting for logs down here at the other end, we don't have too much money in the bank at this moment. How much do we have in a loan? Let's just borrow the full 10 mil, and we will spend the rest of the day trying to pay off. If we look at this, if we grab the line here, can ask us log haulage. We're going to manage the vehicles. We have none selected, 24 vehicles. We're going to mass clone them. And then we're going to add, I think, 6 more, 2, 4, 6, perfect. So we're going to have 54 vehicles on that line. And that should hopefully expedite the amount of logs that we are shipping from here down into our sawmill, and just absolutely boost our profits. And then what I would like to do is set up a line from our tool factory here. We'll probably set up a second. So if we can configure this, and let's put in another set of tracks here, and I believe this will be the end of what we're going to plan to do here. Not for the episode, but for this one freight terminal, because what I'm planning to do is rearrange this whole thing. I don't know if it'll be in the next episode. We'll just have to see how financially viable that is. But I think what we could do, because we've got these logs nicely coming in here, we've got several trains going up and into this area with lots of passing loops. We could probably add one more passing loop just in here. I think that one might be fairly expensive, just given the terraforming. Let's see. Could we get one right here? Yeah, that's actually not too bad. It's pretty cheap. 45,000. I'll take it. And we'll pop this in here. And what I plan to do is take those tools and bring them back to Canmore. And like I said, Canmore existed prior to the railroad coming through. And so I think it would be ideal to try and start to grow that town as quick as possible. Now, I don't like what it's done with the mountain here. I don't have, I mean, we're just spending money I don't have, and I don't think we're really achieving very much. It just looks awful. Let's see if I can just delete it down. Maybe just create a little bit of a face in there. And can we smooth it just a little bit? No, we still get that strange line. Again, I'm just, oh, look at that. We've had a money train come in. So I think we're just going to live with a nice cliff face. Maybe we'll clean it up and extend it around and use some paint to hide it. There we go. We've got money in, so let's repay down to 8 million again. Look at all those trucks heading up the Kananaskis Valley. That should really trigger more logs to come in on this line. Now, here we are. We are just heading into the Rocky Mountains now. So maybe we should hop on board and take a peek. Let's see if we can get out. Oh, and this is our original passenger train too. Maybe, yeah. Ooh, look at how rusty and old that thing is. But no matter. And like nice shiny bell. So I don't know. I think this is where we're gonna call it today. Might end up being a bit of a shorter episode. If it is, I might just combine it with the episode I'm planning to record tomorrow night, and we'll make an extra long one. But if not, we'll call it a night. Oh, hello there, Caribou. That's another thing I'd like to do, is spend some time detailing. I might do that a little bit off camera, adding some fences and some more realistic things. But we now have our date unpaused. We're moving into the future. We're all the way to Banff. And now I think it is time to populate the Bow Valley to really bring this map alive. So I hope you've enjoyed the build to the west, and stick around as I take it through fairly historically accurate 20th century. And then as we move on to the 21st, I plan to kind of move past to today's date in the 2022. And I would like to, at that point, modify it and kind of see what my vision, if I were chief engineer of the CPR with unlimited funds and a fantastic ticket buying public, what I would like to do with the line. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and have yourself a great afternoon, great morning, great evening, great night.